Hello everyone, I hope you are enjoying the summer. I also hope that you are enjoying my videos as well. Summertime is not that comfortable in some areas, so I hope my video can bring some freshness to you. If so, I will be very happy. Starting today, I'd like to talk about topics related to stepping practice in the 3 internal styles of martial arts. This is the first one and will focus on Xingyi. In China, there's the proverb, 教不教拳不教步教步打师傅 or do not teach stepping to your students or he will defeat you. That is just an expression about how important the stepping or footwork is in practice. Topics covered in today's video include: first, Chinese aesthetic conception theory. Second, different level of imagery concept in Chinese martial art. Third, Xingyi and its imagery. Fourth, stepping and its important principles in Xingyi. Fifth, demonstration. And sixth, takeaways. Before we get started, just a quick reminder. I have been posting new videos regularly over the past couple of months, so please hit subscribe and click the bell icon so that you will get notified when I upload a new video. Furthermore, to leave your comments below so that it can spark new discussion and also provide me with ideas for future videos. Okay, so let's get started. First topic, Chinese aesthetic conception theory. Unlike the Western aesthetic study in philosophy with about 200 years of history, the term aesthetics in China has less than 100 years of history. But like any other civilization, the process of creation, analysis, and appreciation of beauty has existed since the beginning of human activity. However, due to cultural differences, the Chinese have a different perspective of the world in both tangible and intangible aspects. In Chinese culture, especially when talking about aesthetics or the nature and appreciation of beauty, very often a term 意境 is commonly used. Be careful here. Though both terms are spelled the same in English, the actual Mandarin meanings and the characters are totally different. In this case, both these words are in false tones. In the case of the philosophical book 易经 or the Book of Changes, the pronunciation of 易经, the book, is in the fourth and the first tones. This term 意境 can be translated to mean aesthetic conception. It is a concept used to describe the object in certain forms and its reflection in terms of sense and sensibility intended. 意 means intended. 境 means parameter or boundary. So together, it means the aesthetic appreciation in the mind created by projecting meaning into a scene. This is quite different from the Western definition. When Chinese talk about a piece of art such as poetry, painting, calligraphy, music, or any other medium, very often the term 意境 or aesthetic consumption will come to mind first, since it is the most popular method to appreciate and evaluate aesthetics in an object in Chinese culture. For example, in traditional Chinese painting, there are different schools including: first, 工笔 or meticulous painting or Chinese realistic style painting. Second, 写意 or style drawing the spirit of the beings or freehand style. This is 工笔 and this is 写意. In Chinese painting, abstract realism has been the most popular style for about 1,000 years now, since it can express the Yijing or Chinese aesthetic conception easier and better than other styles. Furthermore, in order to create and enhance the aesthetic experience to the audience, talented artists focus on creation of the 向外之意, the meaningfulness of a real aesthetic conception beyond the form. I just briefly introduced this topic in order to help us understand martial art. If you are interested in traditional Chinese painting, I can talk about this in much more detail in the future, since I had practiced this art for more than 10 years when I was a child. Later, even though I stopped painting, I continued to spend more than an hour every week appreciating this art. For the purpose of this video, all we need to know is that in China, historically, people appreciate an object or art that can express a well-defined 意境 or aesthetic consumption, especially one in an abstract style. Second topic, different level of imagery concept in Chinese martial art. Now, let's talk about another interesting term in the traditional Chinese martial art culture. It is 象形取意 or pictographic meaning. It is the method in martial art movement design and creation that represent the intended martial techniques using pictograms. In my opinion, imagery is a better term than pictogram, since I believe that the word pictogram is more static, while imagery is more dynamic in explaining certain martial art movements, and in martial art imagery is the result of imitation of certain objects. So from now on, I will use the term imagery. Therefore, to understand this topic, I would like to explain 3 items here. They are: first, what to imitate; second, how to imitate; and third, precision of imitation. First, what to imitate. Very often, animal names, human actions under specific situations, and objects used to indicate certain effects or actions are used in martial art names. It is the imitation of these 3 categories of objects. For example, a dragon flies to the sky, a drunkard falls down, flower hides under the leaf, and so on. Second, how to imitate. Since the term is used to describe a martial movement, the objective is to emphasize the martial technique behind the name. Therefore, in some styles, imitation is very close to its object's original movement. For example, in some styles, such as monkey fist, practitioners actually imitate a monkey's movement. In drunken fist, practitioners imitate a drunk person's movements. However, some other styles, especially the internal styles, do not follow this approach. Instead, the movements are inspired by the object or animals, but are not an exact copy. 3. Precision of imitation. This topic is a result of the previous one. When talking about precision of imitation, we should also talk about precision of principles. Precision of imitation gives importance to imitating the obvious movements of the object or animal. Precision of principles gives importance to grasping the underlying spirit and intentions behind the movement. Precision of principle is a result of the 意境 concept. Like I said before, in some styles, practitioners imitate the obvious physical movements of an object or an animal. So these styles focus more on the precision of imitation. But in some other styles, especially the internal styles, it is hard to see the direct link between the imitated object and the martial movement. This is because the internal styles focus on precision of a principle, a result of the Yi concept. In other words, they gave importance to the spirit and the intentions behind the object's movement and do not focus on the visible movement of the object. Of course, it is fine to focus on the visible movements of an object for performance purposes in other styles, but that would be a totally wrong approach to practice internal styles. Now, pay attention to these 2 points. First, precision of principles does not care about precision of imitation. Second, precision of imitation does not guarantee precision of principle. To give you an example, if a practitioner exactly imitates a monkey's movements when performing the Xingyi monkey routine but does not give importance to Xingyi principle, then that would be a poor quality of practice. On the flip side, if a practitioner follows Xingyi practice but the movement do not look anything like that of a monkey, then it would still be a high quality of practice. To summarize this point in the context of the internal styles, I would highly recommend paying special attention when practicing Xingyi, Taichi, or Bagua. That even though those movements are named after animals or human actions or natural elements, it would be incorrect to only imitate the obvious movement while neglecting the principles and the spirit of the movement. We are practicing martial art, not performance art. Remember to focus on the underlying spirit and principles. Topic 3. Xingyi and its imagery. Like in other internal styles, imagery or practice through imitation in Xingyi is a highly abstract one. It is considered as an example of evolution of imitation or imagery. It is very hard to see the direct link between the Xingyi movement and the movements of the animal after which is named, because Xingyi imitation follows the 2 rules. First, techniques comes first. Second, go beyond the obvious imitation. In Xingyi practice, application trumps imitation. Yes, there are 12 animal forms, but we never compromise on the martial applications in order to look like some animals. The level of imitation involved is to grasp the spirit of the animal movements or the function of that object in order to use it in self-defense situations. This is how Xingyi practice goes beyond simple imitation. I call it an imagery-based approach. Practitioners should keep the imagery in mind and try to focus on the techniques carried by the imagery, instead of just copying the movement without internal imitation. In other words, focus on the animal's spirit and intention instead of their physical movements, and adapt them for your own purposes. Topic 4. Stepping and its important principles in Xingyi. Now, let's practice Xingyi stepping based on the imagery concept. Please keep in mind that I will not talk about the different type of stepping patterns since that is a very basic topic. I prefer introduce the stepping method that helps generate force and is useful in self-defense. There are some principles or proverbs about stepping practice in Xingyi classics. To help you understand it better, I will pick 4 of them and explain their practical aspect. I would like to say it in Chinese first. First, 势如击腿. Second, 踏步中门. Third, 行步如礼. Fourth, 消息全凭后腿蹬. Now in English. First, the stepping posture is like a rooster. Second, one striking, step into the middle gate. Third, stepping forward is like plowing. And fourth, power is generated from the back leg's forward push. Let me explain them one by one. First, the stepping posture is like a rooster. Some people literally translate these sentences as the movement when a rooster steps downward. Well, based on many seniors in Xingyi style back to Tianjin, China, it is commonly believed that it is the posture when the rooster steps forward. The movement is light, but the stance is stable and the structure is solid. This is an expression describing the upward movement of our foot or leg. So, in Xingyi practice, when the foot or leg moves upward, our body should slightly sink downward in order to maintain balance, similar to that of a rooster in a vigilant state. Second, when striking, step into the middle gate. So, what is middle gate, or 中门 in Xingyi? It is the space between your opponent's feet or the vertical center line passing through your opponent's center of gravity. When stepping forward, we aim at that line in order to destroy the balance of the opponent. Strategic stepping in order to break the opponent's balance is part of Xingyi stepping and attacking philosophy. I will explain this topic more in the future. 3. Stepping forward is like plowing. This is another key factor of Xingyi footwork. When stepping forward, it is akin to stepping into the ground. There are many reasons for this type of stepping. One of them is to issue a bouncing force to the fist so that the resulting power will be much stronger in self-defense. Sometimes we call it 刹车劲 or car braking force. It is just like suddenly press the brakes in a car to create momentum, which is a very common method to create this kind of power in Xingyi practice. Pay attention here. The stepping involves a forward motion followed by a downward motion. Simply stepping forward is not sufficient. Please try to apply this method in your practice and you will see the difference with time. 4. Power is generated from the back leg's pushing motion when forwarding. This is one of the classic proverbs in Xingyi. I must have heard these sentences more than 500 times, especially back when I was in Tianjin. And I always remind my students about this proverb. So, what does this proverb tell us? It emphasized the importance of the back leg. So, when stepping forward, relax the front leg and then initiate the forward movement from the back leg. When arriving at the spot, the front foot steps downward and forward, which is the key of Xingyi stepping. This exercise should be practiced on a daily basis. So please keep this imagery in mind. Visualize the imagery and try to realize the imagery through your movement. The right stepping method will make a big difference to your Xingyi practice. Today, I briefly explained these 4 important sentences. Of course, there are many details in practice for each of them. But please keep in mind that no matter what you practice, understanding the principle is the first step to make progress, or else your progress will be limited. If you are a beginner, my advice would be to memorize these 4 proverbs. Your practice may not reflect these proverbs right away, but with time and constant focus on them, I'm sure you will physically experience them and be able to express this with your demonstration. In fact, this is exactly how I practiced before. When my grandfather or other teachers told me something about practice, even though I could not understand or demonstrate those principles right away, I tried to memorize them. With time, I kept having periodic epiphanies, and the meanings of the proverb and the intentions behind them became suddenly clear. Sure, it takes a lot of time, but it is a very effective way to study. Topic 5. Demonstration. Let's go back to the Xingyi Mother Feast, or the 5-element feast. Like I said before, 5 elements practice helps to build a strong foundation. In the 5-element feast, the best one is to practice Xing Yi Stepping exercise is Bengquan, or the wood feast. It has all the 4 aspects that I mentioned in the previous topics. To practice the Beng style stepping, the body's center of gravity should be lowered and the body height should be maintained at the same level without moving upward or downward when stepping forward. Please keep this point in mind when you practice. When I was a child, to practice this exercise, I had to keep repeating this movement for about 2 hours every night for a while before moving on to practice the next element. I still remember the feeling. It was boring, tiring, and exhausting. But the benefit of this kind of training experience as a kid was very obvious, because after I grew up, I did not experience any uncomfortable feelings anymore when I practiced low posture exercise. Now let me demo this for you. Six takeaways. In Chinese aesthetic perception, or Yi Jing, is the concept used in comprehension, appraising, and evaluating objects or art. Not to be confused with Yi Jing, the Book of Changes. Second, use imagery as a method in martial art movement creation is the commonly used method in traditional style in China. In internal styles of practice, do not focus on obvious imitation of an animal's or object's movements. Instead, they use the Yi Jing concept and focus on the spirit and intention behind the movement and adapt it for martial purposes. 3. Xing Yi Stepping practice is unique in terms of force and power generation. We looked at the 4 principles to guide our stepping practice. Please remember them and try to apply them constantly in your own practice. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Enjoy your practice.